Welcome to another Catalyst for a Kinder World conversation. Today I'm joined by Steve Horbaczewski, who I met at a Spaces of Hope event, a Christian-based community development project, which was organised by someone else who was involved in the Leeds Festival, Matthew Barber, who spoke at our first event we ran in Hare Hills. Steve, you actually visited us in Hare Hills at the amazing little cafe called TLC, or Toast Love Coffee. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great little project, but it was one project that was delivering not just great food and an open space and welcome for people, but it was also an education project that benefited a whole range of people. But I want to talk to you today about your project, the Wellbeing High Street, because you had a network of projects that you developed in Ellesmere Port near Liverpool that brought the community together in an amazing way. But before we go into that, I wonder whether you could talk a little bit about how you got into community development, because my understanding is that you came in through Toyota, which isn't usually a route into community development. Would you like to talk about your background a little bit?
I guess a physics degree wasn't either. So they just said it's a grounding in things like that are conceptual, turning stuff into realities.
Okay.
So it was a sound grounding to many disciplines. And having completed another master's at Nottingham, all they talked about was Toyota. So thought, well, I better go and work for this company. So 2 years later after that, then I went to work for them, and based at the engine plant in Deeside. So I was with them from a greenfield site where we were eating in a porter cabin to a superb exporter 13 years later. Responsible for all the parts supply and all the suppliers around the world, and also for any of the finished goods going around the world. So in a just-in-time environment. Then I moved to Brussels for 7 years, and I had some roles in management in corporate planning, business planning, project management, that sort of level. And then a life event changed everything. And I had an opportunity. They offered voluntary release to people. So I thought, if I'm going to step out and do something different, this is the time. So I moved back to England, and then I met my wife, Val, and out of the blue, just said, let's open a cafe in the centre of Chester.
Fantastic. So it was Toyota to a cafe. What can I ask you? What inspired you about the Toyota philosophy? Because my understanding is that you applied it to your community development work.
Well, it's you understand that you look at where the problems are, and then you try and find solutions to those problems, working together with other people in other disciplines. Toyota just happened to do what they say they do on the tin. And they've got lots of teaching and training, like practical problem solving, where you actually spend time trying to solve the problem, not living with stuff and managing it constantly. It's everybody tries to get involved to improve and be more effective and efficient. And obviously I've been in an environment where they've got at least 30 years vision, because they launched a hybrid car 25 years ago. They've just launched a hydrogen one. So within that environment, it's given me this, you can see what the environment looks like and maybe what's needed. And basically it's that I just carried forward. I'm indoctrinated in it and couldn't help that.
So how did you bring that to your cafe in Chester, and what happened from there?
So obviously this is a different paradigm shift to come out of the business world, hard, fast, money orientated. Unfortunately, Toyota was people orientated. We ended up in a church in the centre of Chester. They just gave us the building and said, run your project from here for free. We were giving our time for free. And during that time, I was being introduced to local government departments, the mental health departments, local community projects that are in place to try and just help people available in the daytime. So we had this, well, it's right in the city centre of Chester. So we started to develop a little community of people, and then we developed things like therapeutic art lessons. There was art teaching, self-esteem and confidence build teaching going on, singing lessons. So we were just trying to do a whole aspect of different things in this one building right in the centre for those that were available. And then that's how I really got into good mental health well-being, understanding that this is all stuff that was doing me good, but I could see it was doing other people good that had labels in society for different ails and ailments and aspects like that, but that they wanted to at least be out and try something to improve their overall good mental health well-being.
So did you use the 5 ways to well-being in your work? Were you aware of the 5 ways? Connect, get active, take learning, take notice, keep learning, give. But you have another acronym for it, don't you?
Well, within that, it was when I picked up on that, I saw those 5 aspects, and I said, "Oh, that's what we are doing." So when I realised we were doing that, that's when I really, I guess, launched and got really inspired. I guess at the same time I'd met a guy called Dom Phillips from Manchester that there's some of the earliest social enterprises, and they were running cafes and stuff with people and projects that had mental health. So within all that sort of said, "Oh, this is really good." And that's, I guess, the basis of my inspiration, where then a sequence of events happened where I ended up in Ellesmere Port and opening up my own company called Seed Enterprises. It's a CIC, to sort of do the same thing, but up on a high street in Ellesmere Port.
So how did you develop this network? Because I visited you over there and I was blown away by all the different elements of the Wellbeing High Street project. I wonder whether you could describe a few of them. I mean, I remember that food was central to it as well, but there were many other aspects to it.
Yeah, well, as I'm up on the high street, I'm meeting other individuals that had this same sort of inspiration, that just said we just want to do and help others. And in that process, we're helping ourselves and satisfying all these strategic type elements. So that's stuff I was used to dealing with Toyota. So there was one gentleman, Francis Ball, running the Bridge Community Farm, who had a vision, but he was still in the early throes of getting that off the ground. Now it's really successful. It's delivering organic fruit and veg. They've got a geodesic dome there where they do teaching. They have lots of people that are there. They've got now hydroponics. They are embedded in the heart of the community. They've got some land. So they're growing lots of things, getting volunteers to come in. And it's generally volunteers, again, that maybe have some difficulties, but they can see what being put in a gardening environment can do with people, maybe with autism or mental health or other severe ailments, where there is always something that you can find. Another one was a lady called Rita Lewis, who run the Port Grocery, where they take excess food from supermarkets and then they blended that with other aspects of fruit and veg to provide balanced meals for people. And it's a club. So all these were just starting. I mean, around these inspired type people, and we're at this enthusiasm. There was another lady that had opened an art gallery. We had a thing where Massachusetts Institute of Technology had put a fab lab on the high street, so you can trial different designs and use the latest tech information, equipment and information to build things. So all these were around this area. So I was alongside these people that had the same enthusiasm for this this value-driven thing, which was just to help others.
But there are a couple of other points that I think were fascinating for me. One was that, you know, in this time of, well, having gone from austerity through the pandemic, rather dubious future for the local high streets, you actually used premises in many different ways so that you had projects along the high street that also linked up with the food projects as well, and the social prescribing ones, I recall.
Yeah, so within that, I managed, they had a high street rejuvenation project, so some money had been given to improve the frontages, and they were looking for people like myself that were coming in with social enterprise type initiatives, people-driven initiatives to come together. And that's in a small area that was an old high street that was shutting down, the pubs were shutting down, but there were individuals along that high street in the businesses and in the social enterprises sort of working together with the same spirit of intent, the same spirit of well-being, and that's all I can put it down to. I can't put it on one individual thing, but somehow we recognize each other when we know, and we have a certain way of landing that inspiration, but we know when we meet each other what it is that we're trying to do, and it really is just to help another person to get through the day and feel better about themselves.
So it is really about a different way of working that is framed, if you like, through kindness, as I see it. Not to be righteous or self-interested, but simply because it's practical in terms of building a better environment and outcomes for the community that you're part of.
And I think the important bit in that is that what I realised, it was doing me good in some sort of level that, again, that I couldn't put my finger on. And it's like that, you've got, as you say, acts of kindness that make you feel better. There is something that's innate in us that links that.
But kindness needs resources as well, and you applied for some grant, I understand. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, as it was going, I found there was a lot of, as I was plugging into the social enterprise movement, then there were people that were giving grant money to be tutored by the likes of the Eden Project and receive a grant so that you could try and implement your ideas on the high street. So I joined up with people like, like that, and the local housing association, the local government department, localities and stuff all together were wanting to give me money. So I accepted that along the path in my early years. And then I was introduced to the lottery through the local voluntary sector that was in Ellesmere Port. And at the time, I'd just demonstrated an idea where I took 12 alcoholics that were in recovery into Seed itself. So they were meeting there once a week. And what I said, well, with this money, I'll buy in things for them to do on their high street. And ordinarily they'd walk past these buildings, not know what were in there, but I was then buying a space. So in there was a local theatre company that was there. So on a Saturday morning, we were doing theatrical arts. There was a little local gallery. So we were doing pottery in the shop window. There was a hair and beauty salon across the road. So they were having facials. And ordinarily, all they were saying was, we'd walk past these places and then they were going in, having something either done or they were participating in something, and that they were feeling better in themselves by doing that. So you had things like, oh, I haven't smoked for 2.5 hours. That's unheard of. Oh, I haven't thought of my pills for the past 2.5 hours. That's unheard of. And then as I'm coming out, I'm feeling better in myself. And there was that it was reciprocated. Even the people that were delivering were non-judgmental and wanting to do the same thing. So it's just a whole host of it. It didn't matter who on this little high street, whether it was a business, social enterprise or others, we just had this, I don't know, energy, enthusiasm, a spirit of intent, a spirit of well-being that the lottery loved as an idea. So we went for the big reaching communities one. So we managed to get that, the half $500,000. But I could only do that with a partner like Healthbox that were ex-NHS staff. And they had the pedigree and running, and they loved the idea. And they'd been in the area a couple of years already. And alongside the local housing association and these others, they were saying, well, nobody's ever applied for any funds to try anything like this in this area. Let's give it a go. So we did. We trialed it year one, and then we got funding for another 3 years to actually develop that.
So a large part of this, at that point, could have been described or accepted as social prescribing, that was saving the NHS money and also giving people meaningful activities that were good for their health and well-being.
Yeah.
There was a social prescribing project that you showed me at one point as well. Yeah,
well, in this time, working with the local housing association, it was Plus Dane when I began with, but they could see forward looking that they needed to help their residents and staff. So they'd sponsored me in the earlier days, but cottoned on that they should be putting activities on and getting their own residents to try and join in to build communities where they are and grasp their ideas. That started to develop, and they approached a local GP surgery. And again, one of the GPs there had got inspired by this. His words were, I'll get a patient sitting in front of me and I'm sitting in front of the patient, and we both know that we can't do anything for each other. And what it means is there needs to be like a social prescription outside to do something different. So I tried to put things on next to the actual GP surgery. There was a little community centre. So we did a little food project in there. We did a little cafe meeting in there. Then we started to introduce the art slowly. And then they did art on the building. And then one of the employees that was alongside us then, what is really well rooted in the community there, had grasped all this and brought the actual place online and made it now a food bank, out working. And she'd run her own families projects would be coming up for 7 years. So she was in there. Doing that as well. So there's like all this energy again to try and build something up, but it's right in the heart of the community using existing buildings. So
one of the things that impressed me was the food club. I can't remember the name of it exactly, but you served an amazing number of meals as well. How did that work?
Served, yeah, in that one, it's called the Port Grocery. They'd served 1 million free meals. Every Wednesday, they did a lunchtime for 200 plus people coming in there to have a free lunch. But within there, while that's happening, they're trying to get hold of the people to make them join the other food club, because then it gets them out and introduced to their own community. Then they put in other events on. It's in Trinity Church on Ellesmere Port, which really used to be the real hub of the community and absolutely is now. So alongside that, then they were doing gardening projects. We were putting yoga on in there. The local charity, mental health charity, was putting on therapeutic art. There was self-esteem and confidence teaching we'd put in there. We were trying Pilates, Zumba, all this stuff that gets it. People have to go take a step through a door, which is the hardest thing, before they'll engage in anything. So it was all about that happening on a weekly basis to capture the people for more consistent things that are happening and going on in there.
How do you enable people to take that step through the door, which, as you say, is the hardest thing? If you don't know what you're going to be faced with, it's not always easy. We're always very reluctant to take that risk.
Oh, there's a great example of this. So Seed was on the bottom floor of a 2-story building, and upstairs lived a gentleman that was on the programme. And I remember the first day where he came downstairs to the front door and he couldn't come in. And I just opened the door and I had to invite him to just take a step across. And this is a guy who lived upstairs. So that's what happened the first week. And they went into the back, had the coffee session. Then I'd joined them and said, look, we can put activities on for you. Then the following week, he could walk through and then participate. And then the following week, he was coming and then starting to say stuff in the meeting. And then it'd start to open up, and then we could work with him on all sorts of different aspects then. But it's a very slow process, and one where ordinarily you can't see these steps. We live in such a busy, fast life that we forget the tiny steps that make the difference in somebody's life, which is literally that. I just opened the door and I just smiled on the first bit to then let's open a conversation. That took a number of months.
I think smiling and listening is quite important. But I'd like to just go back to the network that you created. One of the elements that I was impressed with was the fact that the supermarkets were involved, and that so it wasn't just community projects or the public sector, it was the private sector as well, and that there was also this scheme where it was if you like, a new economy where people could buy food and through a contribution get extra value. Can you describe that?
Yeah, you're talking about the Port Grocery. That's yeah, I was fortunate to be right involved just from the beginning for a couple of years because I believed in the people. But yeah, Rita had broken through approaching businesses like Urenco. It's the big engineering firm here, nuclear engineering, and they had a big corporate social responsibility budget that bought into it. Then you've got the local supermarkets like Asda, Tesco's, that bought into the idea, where you then paid £5, but you got £20 plus worth of food back in a bag, and it's a balanced diet along with menus that you could make with that. And that built up into people like Nando's joining in, KFC, Marks and Spencer's. We had them as the charity of the year because you just it's the right thing to do. When you see 200 plus people gathering for free food, and literally it's not that it's this other fine stuff that others will understand what I'm about to say was, I had this difficulty I had to go to say, I don't want to eat free food because I can afford it. But then they said, but otherwise, if you don't eat this, they're going to throw the food away. So you have to eat this free food. And then that was really driven home when there was a guy that was about to be homeless came in with a voucher for food bank. And it's this same step. He said, but, you know, I can't accept this free food, even though he was starving. He was coming with a food voucher. So I had to walk with him and then say, look, I'm eating this because they're going to throw it away. And then he was okay walking with me and then picking this stuff up. But it's these aspects of this thinking and this paradigm you've got to operate within, that you've got to shift from what we think it is to the reality of identifying these small steps of kindness, if you like. But they're like, I'm calling them almost nano steps, not micro, that we don't know we do it because of the way ordinarily the majority of us live. But here it's just that, just give someone this time and do a nano step of, well, come with me. And then walk that journey with the person in their shoes with them, alongside them. And that's what I had to learn was always the bit, is come alongside. we're human after all. We breathe air. If somebody had a monopoly on it, then, you know. It's this nano stuff. So the food project, obviously, everybody jumps on that. Most churches provide free food and stuff. But the one here, I've not seen any other project. Still don't know of any that can gather 200 plus people once a week to do what they crack through to do in Port Groceries, Trinity Church.
I was going to say that I think the other impressive thing about it is that it's an exemplar of how breaking down barriers, not only at the personal level, but at the level or at the organizational level, so that the private sector was able to come on board, the public sector and the voluntary sector were on board, the community was on board, and this idea that we're not separate, that we're all in it together, and when we collaborate and we can find ways of collaborating, we can build much more value than we would otherwise. I don't know if you've got any other observations about the project, but I think as someone who's worked for a wellbeing charity for a while, I've across the country visited many projects, and I haven't seen one that has, if you like, demonstrated this networking across sector boundaries so much with so many different projects. So this is why I wanted you to share your experience here. I don't know if you've got any other observations as well about why it was successful. I'm sure it was down to you as well. I don't think you should be shy about that because you're very good at relating to people. I mean, there is probably no formula for success, but I don't know if you could share anything about if someone was starting from scratch in Leeds with a high street of empty shops available, where do they start? What would you do?
Well, literally, it's this. That's why I have this spirit of well-being. Because does anybody know what actually inspires us? I didn't see that I was going to set up a cafe in the centre of Chester. It was never even a thought on my mind. And then the fact I got hold of the 5 ways to well-being, and then this mental health well-being, and these people, and it's just doing the right thing, but then finding out what are your skills. Obviously mine's sort of resource instigation. I get on well. I don't have barriers, whoever's in front of me. I guess that was my Toyota training. It didn't matter which discipline. They came to the table to just work together. They actually did what it said on the tin. So it was, as you start walking and seeing this, you'll see other inspired people that are doing this stuff. It's find out who they are. I realise there's not many, there's handfuls. But then the other difficulty is it's the handfuls that are not precious about what they're doing still. It's this handful that are still wanting to just do the right thing, and they're just delivering the thing as a result of it, which might be a food project, it might be an arts project, it might be that discipline that you bring. So it's to really, you get to understand yourself and what inspires you and just do more of that. Find others that are doing other inspired things that don't inspire you, but that you could work together to just drive energy together, build a synergy of energy. And that's what, in this spirit of well-being, is my bigger driver, is you'll find as you ask questions that the local voluntary sector, government bodies, businesses, social enterprise, especially with this COVID, the timing now to ground stuff and try stuff and know that there's going to be more than these handfuls that are working together. The stuff I've seen now in Chester is incredible. It's just step out and just go and do it in the spirit of well-being.
It is an inspiring story, which is why I wanted you to share it with people. I think that open attitude that you have, that ability to, relate to people, to, not be put off by barriers, that training that you had in Toyota, where you're just, what's our shared vision, we're going to go for it. And what needs to happen for that to be achieved, I think is a very interesting story in itself.
I mean, some people, you'll make it laugh, because they used to just say, have you met me? And they go, oh yes, we've met him. Because literally I'd just stand in front of someone and I wouldn't let them go until they've heard what I had to say. And then they seem to have remembered it. And it was always making me laugh at the time. Oh yeah, we remember him for that and that. But okay, as long as your intent is always good, and it's all the noble things, as best you can in humility, because how people view it, that's what the hardest lesson was. You can be hated and you can be loved, and you're doing the same thing. So it's a journey of a self-discovery, as well as coming alongside another human being, walking some of the journey in their shoes with them. And just together, there's something just in the two, never mind the bigger thing that comes of it. As you add more, it's more amazing. And I said, what I'm seeing now locally is incredible. Chester, they're trying their own city of hope now in terms of empty shop fronts. They've opened them up to the artists to say, we'll do something with them. So this aspect of the Wellbeing House, it has no choice. The retail shut now and shutting, and it'll only get worse, but Chester's already responding to it.
Okay, well, it's an inspiring story, Steve, and it's a pleasure to talk to you again. For people watching, I hope you will look at the other Catalyst for a Kinder World events that are following this, and also following that, the Heart Shift events, which are the interfaith and civil society events. The Leeds Festival of Kindness, Compassion and Wellbeing is wanting more people to be involved for the festival next year, because we aren't going away, just like Steve. We're intending to make this a 5-year project, and let's create a kinder world together. Thanks very much, Steve. Great to be with you.
Yeah.
Bye for now.